Hey everybody, welcome to Not Up for Debate. It's Damien and Randy here. We have our friend Paljor with us. I'm excited to have Paljor here. He and I have actually been messaging back and forth for it's probably been 2 months of messaging, maybe a month and a half, I don't know, somewhere in there, about his Buddhist faith, and it's kind of been educational for me. It's been a lot of fun just talking to him individually, and I actually got to join in on an online session of a Buddhist training of his. Well, he wasn't the leader, but his leader was the one that was training us to meditate. So that was a really cool experience. So anyway, welcome, Paljor. We're excited to have you.
Yeah, welcome. And Damien,
really grateful to be here and grateful for your guys' interest.
Really appreciate it. And Damien, you were supposed to share the link with me about the meditation. I never got that link.
Oops. That's
Yeah.
they do it.
Damien, which Lama was teaching? Do you remember?
I don't remember. And they she said her name probably once. And it said just monastery on the thing, like the name. Just said, and I was like, dang it, I can't even remember her name. But I think she said she's gonna be doing it for the next few weeks, I think. So
yeah, they usually rotate off every month.
Okay.
Different lamas will pick up the tab or pick up the pace.
She seemed really cool. It was a pretty cool experience. And
yeah. Usually lamas Pela and Ladrin do the meditation class.
Okay, I can't really. Neither one of them sound very familiar to me.
Or Dapa too. Dapa's a little bit older. It's a Dapa also.
Okay.
Yeah, she's been meditating for 40 years.
Okay.
She was one of the first lamas at our monastery to ordain, actually.
Okay. Do they? And this is just a completely out of ignorance because I don't know. But do they all have? Because she had a nearly bald head. Is that
yes?
A common practice?
Buddhist clergy shave their heads.
Okay.
And that is it's a symbol of renouncing attachment and letting go.
Okay.
So you're letting go of all of your worldly attachment to your hair. Okay. The other thing that Buddhist clergy clothing does and hair is it makes everyone equal. So men wear skirts. Everyone wears skirts, right? Everyone wears robes, and everyone shaves their heads. So there's sort of a switch from being a very gender-identified person to becoming something more androgynous when you enter Buddhist clergy, when you swear monastic vows.
Okay.
That
makes sense.
I was actually curious because I was like, well, I don't see everyone. I don't know a lot of Buddhists, but I mean, just looking at yourself, right. I was like, I don't see you in that right now. So you're talking about the clergy.
It's because I'm a layperson. And there's actually very interesting to know. There's different kinds of laypersons as well. So, particularly in my lineage of Buddhism, and in many of the other Tibetan lineages, there are a lot of lay teachers, right? So they aren't monastics, but they're also teachers. Okay. Then there are yogis, and someone who's formerly a yogi will stop cutting their hair altogether, and their hair will be, they'll kind of sit in a big matted block on top of their head, almost like one big dreadlock.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different sort of ways of wearing the hair and different kinds of flexible ways of people becoming teachers, particularly in Tibetan Buddhism. In some of the other disciplines, it's a little bit more formal, but
interesting.
Gotcha. Before we were rolling, we were talking about your name. So your name's Paljor, but you were telling me there's actually 3 parts to that, and you were giving me a little reason for that.
So the proper pronunciation is Paljor. It's just quick.
Paljor.
Yeah, it's not French.
Okay.
Paljor.
That's what I wonder.
Paljor.
It's Tibetan, yeah. And so my name is Karma Tsering Paljor. Karma is my lineage. We're the Karma Kaju lineage. Tsering is my guru. Lama Tsering is the retreat master at Palpong Thuban Choling, the monastery that I'm a member of. And Paljor is the name, the first name that he gave me, personal name. And Paljor means one who has accomplished a large amount of merit or tremendous merit in past lives and has been blessed with treasure and wealth in this life.
Cool.
Oh, nice.
That's awesome. That's very cool.
Now, did you know that before getting that name?
No, I did not. I actually did not. I wasn't even certain I was going to get a name. So to recap sort of what we talked about before, when someone converts to Buddhism, they're typically given a Buddhist name. But it doesn't always happen, and different lineages have different traditions. For instance, the Theravadins usually don't give a Dharma name to anybody who isn't a monk, right? And it isn't an always true thing, right? Some sometimes if you convert to Tibetan or Zen or whatever, you don't get a Dharma name, and it's just up to the master's intuition. And I had no idea what my name was going to be. No, but I did ask my Lama if I could get one, and I was really, really grateful that I did get a new name.
That's cool.
And we have a lot to get into because both me and Damien, we really don't know a lot about the Buddhist faith.
Right. Fine, I got a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
that's awesome. But I do have to. One of my ignorances. The only Lama that I've ever heard of is, of course, the Dalai Lama. Mm-hmm. So I always thought a Lama was like a Pope in the Catholicism.
Yeah, so did I. Kind of thought that as well.
Okay, so I'll clarify that for you. There are a lot of different kinds of teachers in Tibetan Buddhism. It's very flexible. Mm-hmm. You got to remember, right? Tibet is a really, really Spartan, very difficult place to live. You're talking 13 to 16,000 feet up on the Tibetan plateau. Almost no farmland. Everything's made of rock. People are farming yaks and sheep. They don't have any money. It's tough. It's tough living. So there are 4 lineages, but I'm not going to get into all the details of that because that's going to bog stuff down. Actually, I'll just be cut more to the quick. So. All lineages of Buddhism have monks and nuns, okay? Everyone has monks and nuns. A lot of lineages, but not all of them, also have lay teachers. Now, lay teachers are people, or ordained laypersons. Those are people who have sworn vows, but not monastic vows.
Okay.
Right? So they have sworn most of the precepts, and usually they don't swear celibacy vows, but some do. The thing is, they just don't live at the monastery. Then, in Tibetan Buddhism, okay, we have lamas. Now, the word lama means wisdom mother, someone who gives birth to wisdom in the mind. And not all monks and nuns or lay teachers are lamas, right? And not all lamas are monks or lay teachers. Okay? A lama is, in the past, in history, it was a title conferred on people by others. So you would, as a parishioner, would go to your teacher and say, Lama, please teach me, and would give the title that way. Right, but now it's become more formalized. In the 1800s, there was a master named Jengon Kongtrul Lord Thay, who formalized the process of turning people into lamas. And he made a retreat based on the Kalachakra Tantra that lasts 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days. And that retreat has been passed down through the lineages and through time and arrived on our shore with Shangram Trungpa Rinpoche, who's a very controversial and influential lama in the, I believe it was in the 50s, or it could be wrong, maybe the 60s. But my monastery still has my monastery is one of the places that's a premier 3-year retreat center in the and not just the country, in the world, actually. And I'm very proud of that, to be able to practice at such a illustrious institution. In the way that the title Lama is conferred now is if someone goes in and they finish the 3-year retreat, and it is, the retreat master or the High Lama that's overseeing the retreat passes the person, they're conferred with the title of Lama.
Okay. Let me just see if... I'm assuming Randy did not mean to exit. Uh-oh. You just told me my internet is down. All right, guys. Sorry about that pause. Randy's internet went out. Mid speech from Paljor, so we're hoping he can rejoin us. And if not, it'll just be Paljor and I. So hopefully you don't mind, Paljor. I feel like Randy asks all the good questions, so hopefully you can have still. I'm sure we can still have a great conversation. Okay, so you were talking about how one would become a llama at that retreat. You might have already mentioned this. Forgive me if you did. But at that retreat, can you go into some detail about what they might do there?
Well, actually, unfortunately, I can't. So,
okay.
Tibetan Buddhism in general. I guess I have to back things up. There's three different kinds of Buddhism, right?
Right.
Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana.
Okay.
Now, Vajrayana is esoteric Buddhism, and that implies that there's a fair amount of secrecy in our practices.
Oh, okay.
The retreat is where the highest practices are taught, so it has the most secrecy.
Okay, that's totally fair. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so can you?
And also, I haven't done it, so
you're like yeah. Even if you did know, you couldn't tell us, but you don't even know, so it's that's funny. So what I guess who is, because there's, and maybe I'm just misunderstanding, but there's these different lamas. Who is the Dalai Lama then? Like, why is that person so famous?
I'll explain.
Yeah.
There are different gradations to how important the Lama is, right?
Okay.
The Dalai Lama is what's known as a tulku. And then when a master reaches a certain level of realization, they become adept enough to intentionally reincarnate into a womb and leave instructions behind for how to find them.
Oh, interesting.
And their awareness is to a high enough degree that in the new body, they can remember who they were. Right?
Wow, okay.
And the first Dalai Lama got his title from one of the Mongol Khans, I believe. He was a teacher to one of the Mongol Khans. I think it was Altai Khan, if I'm not mistaken. And the Dalai Lama is in charge of one, and I told you there's 4 schools of Tibetan Buddhism, right? The Dalai Lama is in charge of the Gelugpa school, which eventually became the dominant school. They're also known as the Yellow Hat school. And if you ever see the Dalai Lama on TV, you'll see these guys with yellow hats all around him.
Okay.
So they're known as an academic school, very academic. And he is very important because besides being in charge of the Gelugpa school, the Dalai Lama also functioned as Tibet's king.
Okay, interesting.
So he was in charge of their government and the dominant sect of the religion.
Okay. Is that even today? He's still the king of Tibet?
Well, he's renounced his governmental position, although in all sort of sum and substance, he still remains in charge of the Tibetan government.
Okay, interesting.
Although there is a prime minister now, it's been democratically elected, I believe.
Okay, and I guess something I just clicked for me, I guess, would be that it would be the same guy, the same person that would be like the Dalai Lama that was the Dalai Lama in the 1800s is still the Dalai Lama today, right? So
right, it's the same guy. He's just got a different face and was born out of a different womb,
different body. Okay, that's really interesting to think about. That's kind of a trip to think about. That's kind of kind of fun. I mean, like that guy could have known like your great 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 grandparents or whatever.
Cool, actually, so the Dalai Lama is not the only tulku in Tibetan Buddhism. Actually, okay. I forget which particular pair of tulkus There is, but there's two High Lamas that like knew each other in a past life, and they remember they were married, like they were husband and wife, and now they're two different. They're two guys and they're friends, but they sit and reminisce about when they were married.
Interesting.
Yeah,
And that's I guess another would be another question of mine is, and I know I think you said you preferred, and we can erase this if we need to as well. You preferred not to talk about reincarnation too much, right? Because you didn't want to.
no, it's not that I don't prefer to talk about it too much. I don't think I told you that. No, it's okay. Not that I don't prefer to talk about it too much. It's I don't want to talk about Bardo too much because it's complicated, and I don't know about it all that much.
Oh, Bardo. Okay.
Yeah. I can generally go over Bardo, but I'm not like an expert on Bardo or anything. And there are aspects of Bardo that are also supposed to be secret.
Okay. For some reason, I don't remember what Bardo was. You'd probably tell me, and I'd be like, oh yeah.
Yeah. So Bardo is the interval. It's Buddhist purgatory.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that's okay. For some reason, I had it. My apologies. For some reason, I had it in my head that you didn't want to talk about reincarnation. Is actually what I'm like absolutely fascinated with.
Sure.
It's one of those things that even within my own Christianity, I'm kind of like, man, I have a hard time not believing that there's got to be some more lives. And I know that's like completely against Christian thinking or Christian belief system. Welcome back, Randy. Hey.
I mean, it's not, right? Jesus was reborn.
Yeah,
Damien.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem.
But
no problem.
By the way, I was going to say I don't think it is. You know, there's a lot of different, not just Jesus, but like also I think maybe not ultimately very highly recognized figures, but people who claim to have died and then they're reborn different. They're reborn as different people in the same body. I've been reborn. You know. I was reading this really wonderful article about this person called the Public Universal Friend. Her name was Jemima Wilkinson. She got a fever, a really nasty case of typhoid fever, almost died. She said she died, and then she was reborn as this person called the Public Universal Friend.
I think I've heard of her.
Interesting.
So like, Jesus was reborn. So I don't think that the idea of reincarnation is totally incompatible with Christianity. The Dalai Lama also says, by the way, that Christianity can be practiced overlapping with Buddhism. And there's many Buddhists who practice Abrahamic faiths and Buddhism together.
Interesting. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, because I guess the only thing that made me think that was that I think the Bible says that maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Basically, I thought that in Christianity that they're like you were made of dust, right? Or something like that. And so like there was no like pre-life. But I have a hard time like picking that up. Like I guess I just have a hard time not believing in reincarnation, which is a funny thing because as a kid I thought that was like a kind of a wacky idea, but as an adult I'm like, man, I really think that's a thing. So anyway, Randy, we while you were gone, I asked Paljor if is it okay if we talk about reincarnation or you prefer not to, right? And he said it's actually Barto that he prefers not to talk about. So we can Bardo.
There's a D, not a T.
D. Okay, Bardo. Okay. So we can talk about reincarnation. That makes me feel better. So
you just dived right into the good stuff, huh?
Yes, I know. Randy. You're like, I missed half of it. No.
Well, I kind of wanted to walk in from his were you always a Buddhist? Oh, we seem to have lost you.
Oh, can you hear us?
Oh, there you
I got you.
So
the question is like how I became a Buddhist.
Yeah.
So actually, I found meditation through psychotherapy.
Okay.
And the meditation gave me tremendous amount of relief. And the therapeutic modality I was using was based on Zen Buddhism. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to just take the take the milk. I want the whole cow.
Right.
So I went and I looked for a Zen master. I practiced Zen for a little while, and I realized it didn't really click with me. Zen is a little bit too ascetic for me.
Okay.
I needed a little bit more. You know what? I was too attached to my books. I wasn't ready to give up my books. And the Tibetans accommodated my books, and they had an open temple where I could go. There's a Theravada temple not far from me also. It actually has a world-renowned master as an abbot. But the Theravadins are all quite old there, I believe, and they're quite strict with their COVID, and they only do stuff on Zoom. So I didn't want to do only Zoom practice. Although I do visit their temple. It's very beautiful. So
the Buddhist faith is a recent thing for you then, and
it is. Yeah, I converted in August of last year.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow, that's really recent. Wow, okay.
So you said you didn't want to give up your books. What do you mean by that? Do you mind elaborating?
So Zen is I don't know how you've seen Zen pictured in like film or movies or anything.
Right.
Zen is a very ascetic practice. It's almost entirely practice oriented, and it discourages reading.
Oh,
They discourage learning. They discourage thinking. It's very, very about the meditation, and very discreetly following the Zen master's instructions. And it was too little for me.
Okay.
I was too agitated and anxious when I started practicing, and I couldn't sit still enough to do it.
Gotcha.
The Tibetan, I'm not sure if you've seen Tibetan Buddhist artwork, but here, I'll show you one of my tankas. This is a traditional Tibetan wall hanging. This is I'll get you Buddha and the Arhats. This is Buddha and his 16 disciples.
Okay.
As you can see,
I've seen.
It's quite vivid and busy. There's a lot going on, and the Tibetan art and architecture, and I think the symbolism and liturgical method is very extra, and I like that.
Right.
It really attracted me to Tibetan Buddhism as a faith.
Right.
And on top of it, also, I found lamas that were very cool with me reading.
I would have a hard time giving up my books too, man. So that's understandable.
That's not to disparage the Zen practice. It's a very profound and terrific lineage. It's just not for me.
I'm wondering, and I already explained my naivety. So from this point forward, just remember we're very naive with the Buddhist faith.
You're talking to like a 5-year-old about your religion for both of us. So,
but I'm wondering if that just isn't for you right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, is maybe this part of your journey? I don't know. Obviously, just curious if.
If I could practice Zen now, yeah.
Well, if that's just part of your journey, yeah. So,
well, the thing is, sometimes I go sit with the Zen students, because I really enjoy sitting and meditating with other people. But the Zen master is not one of my teachers. Okay. Sometimes I jab with him a little bit, jibber jabber back and forth. But fundamentally, our practices are different.
Gotcha.
It's not the same.
So it'd be like. Okay, go ahead.
The Tibetan methods are very different from the Zen method.
Okay.
So it's what's the word I'm looking for? I guess I'll actually use what the Zen master told me, because there was a period when I was just starting when I had to choose, because I was going to the Zen center and I was going to the Tibetan temple. And the Zen master told me, he said, you have to pick a teacher. The soup is different at the end. It's both, you're going to get soup, okay? Mm-hmm. But the soup is different at the end.
Gotcha.
And you can see the difference, I think, between. Let's look at what I believe is an enlightened Zen master, the late Master Thich Nhat Hanh, right? And then compare his manner and sort of his energy to the Dalai Lama. Now, the Dalai Lama is a lot more dynamic, engaged, loud. You know, he's more flashy, a lot more flashy, right? He's in the mix. He's out there.
Right.
Master Thay was very demure and humble and laid back, you know? Mm-hmm. So the path is not the same, right? The enlightenment is.
Right.
But the path to get there and the end result are a little bit different. And I had to really choose where I wanted to go.
So that because before this conversation, I always thought of them as the same thing. Tibetan and Zen was kind of actually I thought Zen was just part of the Tibetan. You know,
no, Zen is quite different. Actually, the history is entirely different. So, do you want me to tell you about the history?
Sure. You can give us a little rundown if you like.
Now, how in depth do you want me to get? Because I can get pretty in depth.
I would say middle.
Yeah.
Like we don't want all the details, but give us.
Yeah.
All right. So Zen came to China with the 28th patriarch Bodhidharma. Okay. He was the 28th patriarch of Buddhism that had got the Dharma transmission from Buddha, and he went to China. Nobody knows why. And the emperor wanted an audience with him because the emperor was a big patron of Buddhism. It was about the year 520. And Bodhidharma started spreading Zen in China. Now, Zen is very much about silent meditation and practice only, meditation only.
Okay.
And oral instructions from the master, right? And it's what's called Mahayana Buddhism. Mahayana focuses quite a bit on compassion and also the Buddhist teaching of emptiness, which means that there's no phenomena that have inherent existence outside of its interconnected nature with other things. It's kind of a heady concept.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But realizing this great compassion and emptiness at the same time can bring you to enlightenment. And so Bodhidharma spread Zen in China, and then eventually it worked its way to Japan. And it was called Chan in China. Bodhidharma taught at the Shaolin Temple. They practice Chan over there too. And then it was brought to Japan, and that's where we have our Zen that in America comes from Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Tibetan Buddhism was initially brought to Tibet in about 800 AD, 850 AD, by this fellow named Guru Padmasambhava, who is from what is now Afghanistan. He was supposed to be born from a lotus in the middle of a lake. It's an immaculate birth. He was 8 years old when he was born. And, he did miracles and stuff, all throughout his life. I'm not going to get into all the details. But his big miracle was taming the demons of Tibet's weather to allow for the construction of the first monastery in Tibet. They actually didn't have any scripture at the time that he was around, so he had to send his friends to go steal the Buddhist scripture from the Indian king. It's a really good story if you ever want to look at his spiritual biography.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So he was the one who brought Buddhism to Tibet, and the Buddhism that he brought to Tibet is the Vajrayana Buddhism. Okay, this Vajrayana Buddhism is a subset of Mahayana Buddhism, so that compassion and emptiness element is there. But Vajrayana Buddhism is also called the vehicle of the secret mantra. So it's the esoteric vehicle of Buddhism. And Buddha taught the Mahayana scriptures, to a very small number of people. And there was oral transmission until like 100 AD. give or take. Now, the Vajrayana scripture, okay, there's actually another lineage that, like another way it came to Tibet. And my lineage is that, but the Vajrayana scripture was taught to even fewer people, and there are tantric scriptures in there that basically what they do. The Vajrayana's hallmark is it allows people to take their suffering and transmute it and transform it into enlightened behavior, into an enlightened way of living. So there's nothing fundamentally that has to really be changed, and that's why it's considered to be the swiftest vehicle to enlightenment, and you can get enlightened in one lifetime. Now, that doesn't mean it's not difficult, and it's not going to, overturn the apple cart in your life, right?
Right.
Sometimes fast things like Ferraris are a little bit more dangerous than a Toyota Camry,
Yeah.
The other way that the Vajrayana came to Tibet, in about there were some masters from this university called Nalanda University that got together, Tilopa and Naropa. Tilopa was one of these very small amount of people that had the oral transmission of the Tantras. Okay? And he gave that to his student Naropa, who gave that to this very famous fellow named Marpa the translator, who took all of the tantras that were written in Sanskrit and then brought them back to Tibet and translated them. Marpa was the teacher of this guy Milarepa, who's a very, very famous Tibetan saint, and that's how my lineage was born, the Karmakaju lineage from Milarepa.
Wow.
So it's a little complicated, right?
Yeah, it was like quite the information. And we definitely...
Was that too much?
No. It would probably be better with charts, but
yeah. There's like a lot of it's wordy, like there's like a lot of words, and I'm like, what, like kind of like what's this word? How do you say that word?
We don't have to get a test.
Stop me if there's anything you don't understand, and I'll break it down and explain it. Please, don't feel abashed about interrupting me.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, and we'll definitely ask some more questions. We're going to go to break real quick, and then when we come back, we're going to dive a little bit deeper with Paljor, right? No, I messed it up again. Paljor. So, anyways, hang tight, guys, and we'll be right back.
Hey, Randy, have you ever had crack and cheese?
Well, I've had one of those. I'll let you guess which one.
Combine them, man. Just like Satisfied Food Truck did to create their delicious crack and cheese dinner. It's a handcrafted 3-cheese macaroni with buttery panko, or what they call a hood rat crumble, on top. I love the hood rat crumble.
Oh man, that sounds delicious.
Yeah, chasing it down with their Gingosaurus punch is the next step to a perfect dinner. And if you don't go for the crack and cheese, then go for the basic bird slider. I love me a good mini burger.
I mean, why not get both?
Exactly. Order the whole food truck.
How do I find them?
They're in the San Antonio area. Look up Satisfied on Facebook or at satisfied.sa on Instagram. Also, they do catering. Visit their catering website at enzosce.com. That's ENZOSCE.com.
Awesome. I'll tell them Damien sent me.
Andy, you remember how excited I was when I bought my house here in San Antonio?
Oh, yeah, man. You were pretty excited.
You know the one thing I didn't like?
That you were 2,000 miles away from the blue field?
The fence, Randy. The fence.
Oh.
Yeah, it was one windstorm from blowing over. That is until I was introduced to Van and Sons Fencing. Mark was able to meet with me right away and give me free quotes on different variations of how to build our fence. I eventually went with cedar pickets, treated 2x4s, and metal posts that were able to withstand winds of 120 miles per hour.
Oh, that's awesome, man. And you need that with the storms you get down there.
Right? And a year later, I'm still happy with the beautiful sturdy fence and the 2 gates that Van and Sons built for us. Mark, the owner, is actually a neighbor of mine, and he's done several fences in our neighborhood, and I can tell that they have integrity with each job. They don't cut corners, and they offer fair prices. They'll price match other reputable fence companies, too.
Well, if I get my act together and actually move to San Antonio, I'll have to hit up Van and Sons Fencing. Are they on social media?
Of course. Check out Van and Sons Fencing on Facebook. They have plenty of great pictures of their craftsmanship. And when you're ready, you can message them directly on Messenger or call or text Mark directly at 210-944-9238. Oh, and remember, fences make great neighbors.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for taking that short break. We still got our friend Paljor here. We're trying trying not to butcher any of the language here, especially Paljor's name. So hang in there with us. So we were just talking about the different lineages and talking about how a very brief history of different lineages, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
It seemed like a lot in a very brief time, which is kind of what we talked about. The one thing that caught my attention was you were talking about there was a very esoteric teaching as opposed to I guess a more broad teaching
Correct.
of
Yeah.
Buddhism. So what it kind of reminds me of, not to compare faiths, but it kind of reminds me of when Jesus spoke to his disciples. He said that he talks to them one way, but when he talked to the people, he taught in pictures. He taught in stories, where when he told them the stuff, he gave them, the meat and potatoes. Is that kind of how?
Yeah. So Buddha taught everyone according to their own ability, right?
Okay.
The real fast and dirty. Right?
Sure.
There are three lineages, main lineages, right? So 3 schools that survive. Theravada. The Theravada is also known as the lesser vehicle, but there's really nothing lesser about it.
Okay.
It's the path of renunciation, and the Theravada method really is by renouncing different sort of things and having extremely strict moral discipline, and then through meditation also severing attachment to the ego.
Okay.
And that's their way of doing things. Now, for some people, that's the easiest way, right? It takes a really long time and it's really difficult, but it's very easy to understand.
Okay.
You don't eat after noon. Don't handle money. Be celibate, right? Follow the monastic code extremely strictly. Like, that's their thing. Then there's the Mahayana, right? The Mahayana are all about compassion and emptiness. And it's a very sort of, it's a more heady sort of doctrine, right? And it does require profound meditative skill and dedication to get it. But it isn't something that regular people can't get either. As a matter of fact, the 6th Zen patriarch, Huineng, was a turnip farmer. And there's a famous Mahayana scripture called the Diamond Sutra. There was a public reading, and he immediately became enlightened. So
Can you? Well, you're going to go over the other school, but I have afterwards. I want to kind of talk about enlightenment, if we
Sure.
can. Yeah.
So, and then finally, the esoteric vehicle, right? These teachings are for the most gifted. They were initially reserved for the most gifted students, okay, and the most devout students of the Buddha, because they're difficult, okay. They're extremely profound, and if mishandled, can really hurt someone.
Okay.
There's been a number of actually on another podcast on Guru Viking. I forget whom was the psychiatrist's name, but there are Tibetan practices that are the Vajrayana practices that can be dangerous if mishandled properly or done by the wrong people. Even the lamas, that I know have told me that, some people have gone into the 3-year retreat and don't come out right.
Right.
There's a practice called dark retreats. Some people have very bad reactions to dark retreats where they're isolated in the darkness without speaking for a month at a time or more, and meditating in the darkness, solitary retreat and stuff. It's not for everybody. You really have to have the right stuff for it. The other thing you have to have is profound devotion and trust in your teacher. Mm-hmm. You really have to be, and you have to be very mature about it too, because once you once you swear vows to your teacher in Vajrayana Buddhism, that's it. Okay? There's no backing out. You have to see the teacher like the Buddha. Now, of course, you can stop taking teachings from them, but you always have to respect them after that. There's no going back. And that's one of the other things that distinguishes the Vajrayana from the other vehicles, is that one of the things that the Vajrayana makes use of are highly awakened masters doing very close one-on-one teaching under sworn vows of secrecy and tremendous devotion with their students, right? Like, I'll give you an example. These are ancient examples, of course. This isn't how things go anymore.
Right.
But Naropa was so devoted to Tailopa that when Tailopa told him to jump off a roof, he did it and broke his legs. No questions asked. That was the devotion he had. There's Milarepa also. His guru Milarepa was a killer. He was a sorcerer, casted spells, that killed about 80 people. And when he came to his teacher Marpa had him undergo some very rigorous purification. Marpa had him build stone towers by hand, 5 stories tall, on the sides of mountains in Tibet. Okay? And, every time that Milarepa built the towers, Marpa would come and tell him, no, it's wrong. Tear it down and build it again on the other side of the mountain. And he did it 5 times until the guy collapsed. He had weeping sores all over his body. He was malnourished. But Milarepa trusted his teacher. And he didn't question the instructions. He just did it because he understood that Marpa had the true realization, and he was going to get him where he needed to go. Milarepa had a lot of ego. It was a lot of ego clinging in him about how gifted he was as a student, and didn't really have a lot of contrition. I mean, he had some contrition, but he didn't really understand, I think, based on my reading of Milarepa's story, that Milarepa, before his purification, didn't really understand what he did. And he really had to go through a lot of suffering to purify that. Mm-hmm. And actually, at the end of it, Marpa was very compassionate and gentle and loving. But you see, someone isn't going to do that just from reading scripture. You need the one-on-one discreet instruction from the awakened master to take someone who killed 80 people and turn him into an enlightened master. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the whole reason for that, this was a lesson that he was getting. Yeah,
it's a teaching.
Yeah.
Not a punishment.
Right. It was a teaching, and not to cheapen it, because it definitely sounds like it's cheapening it, but it kind of reminds me of, once again, preface, not to cheapen it, but it kind of reminds me of like the Karate Kid, where Mr. Miyagi had Danielson, doing the paint defense and all this, and he was getting pissed off the whole time, but there was a lesson in there. And like I said, not to cheapen it, man. So I hope
it doesn't cheapen it at all. Believe it or not, martial arts, like I told you, Bodhidharma taught at the Shaolin Temple.
Right.
Bodhidharma was the one who invented Kung Fu.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So believe it or not, martial arts, if you really want to trace it back, pretty much is Dharma practice. It's Buddhist practice. It's all Buddhism. That's why you have, martial arts teachers that really behave a lot like Buddhist masters.
Gotcha.
Interesting.
So in a way, it is connected.
Very much so.
Yeah. So good comparison, Randy.
Does that
should I
clarify the distinction of the esoteric vehicle from the other two?
Mm. Say that again. We missed the first part of what you said.
Does that clarify the distinction of the esoteric vehicle?
It does. And now that you've explained that a little bit more, can you tell us what avenue that you are on?
Yeah, so I'm in the esoteric vehicle.
Okay, so you are in the
Tibetan Buddhist practice. Okay, it sort of subsumes the other two vehicles and all the different lineages of Tibetan Buddhism. You begin with Theravada practices. You progress to Mahayana practices.
Okay.
And then you get what's called preliminary practices. These are very rigorous. The preliminary practices begin with meditation on 4 thoughts that turn the mind, which is about, in my school was 250 hours of meditation. Then 1,111 or 111,111 prostrations, full length prostrations, where you go all the way face down and pull your hands up. You may have seen people in Tibet doing those style prostrations like on the street.
Interesting.
Okay.
Right, so they're full length, full body prostrations with a meditation and a refuge prayer. Then 111 purification mantras of Buddha Vajrasattva, excuse me, and then 1,111 mandala offerings to the Guru and Guru Yoga. Guru Yoga is a meditation practice where you mix minds with your Guru.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll show you what the mandala looks like here. This is
Sounds like that's it's an art, right?
It's sort of. This is my mandala. You can see it right there on my. So it is in a sense. It's not the Kalachakra mandala with the sand, that the monks are making for the Dalai Lama, but it is a mandala. And sort of the way you do it is there's a sequence where you fill the mandala with gem chips, and you visualize it as being the entire universe that you're offering to your Guru. And then you wipe it clean, and then you do it again.
Okay.
Interesting.
So you've been in this
the
since
preliminary practices take a long time, by the way. It's not short.
Well, and that's where I was getting at. So you said you went into the Buddhist faith of August of last year?
Yes. Yeah. And where I'm at right now is I finished my outer preliminary, which is the 4 thoughts that turn the mind. So I'm onto prostrations.
So you're going through this pretty quick then, right? Like this is fast.
I'm very devoted. It's I love my faith. Really, I do. I'm extremely devoted. It's the most important thing in my life.
And the 1,111, I'm seeing a trend on that. That's a pretty special sacred.
I don't know what the significance of the number actually is. I should ask, but I don't know. I think it's just I'm sure it has some kind of significance, probably to the Kalachakra Tantra or something. There's some numerological significance to it. I just don't know what it is.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I actually have family members that almost look at that number, not to use the word sacred, but they kind of do look at it as sacred, but for a non-Buddhist reason. Like that's a special number to them, 1111. If you happen to look at the clock at 11:11, you make a big deal of talking about it.
I've heard that's like an angel. It's like an angel number, right? What's
something like that. Yeah. That is. So that's why when you were bringing it up, and you brought it up a few times, I was like, oh, okay, there's something here.
Yeah. What's the deal with angel numbers? But I don't know what those are. So
I honestly don't know exactly. I know with them, it's just a special number.
It's like a good luck thing or something.
Yeah.
All I can think of is as a kid, we would say 11:11, make a wish. That's the only thing that.
Right, exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah,
but I don't know what that means or why. Like, I have no idea.
There's some interesting numerology in Buddhism. Like my rosary here. Buddhist rosaries have 108 beads for 108. There's 108 defilements of the mind. And you purify that with your mantras, and we count mantras on your rosary. Also, the numbers 21 and 7 are also sacred too.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Is there a reason why for those numbers, or do you know?
It probably has something to do with some esoteric secret. I really don't know.
Right.
A lot of other lineages. I think all lineages wear malas. Actually, it's not just Tibetans. So. 108 has significance in every different kind of Buddhism.
So you said that you got started in Buddhism because of meditation. So you would do it for psychotherapy, and you're like, I'm just going to get the whole cow, as you said, instead of just the milk. When Damien was telling me about the meditation, so I've been meditating for about 10 years, but my meditation kind of happened on accident. I I actually had gotten. I don't ever get sick. Like it just never happens to me as far as like the cold, flu, or anything like that. But one time I got sick and it really kicked my butt. This was going back around 2008, and I was hallucinating. And after I healed up, I started noticing right before I fell asleep that I would start to see my dreams, if you will, but I was still very lucid. I was very awake.
Mm-hmm.
And at first, when I saw it, it kind of scared me, and I would kind of just hold on to that. And I would hold on to that sensation. I'd kind of just watch what was happening because I would see visual and I would hear auditory things. And I thought I was going crazy. Like, I'll just be honest. And then I had read later on that this was something that a lot of inventors, people like that would do intentionally, is they would put themselves in a near sleep state and then they would ask questions and then they would, a lot of times their subconscious mind would come up with answers. So Damien had talked about the Tibetan meditation that you had invited him to. And I was like, I actually try not to go to the Tibetan meditation because you're supposed to empty your mind, not, as far as I understand it, not look at the things that are popping in your head. Is that correct? Like,
It's not entirely correct.
Okay.
So, no, I would say it's different. It's like cleaning your mind, right?
Okay.
In Buddhism, fundamentally, everything's okay, right? The problem is it's dirty. Gotta clean it up. That's a really good analogy for how we look at the world.
Okay.
You know, people think that Buddhists are all about, oh, so much suffering, you know, like, oh, it's samsara, this world is awful. It's a matter of properly perceiving. It's a matter of correctly seeing. And it's a matter of correctly behaving that brings us out of suffering. So it's the same thing with your mind, actually. It's a matter of observing your thoughts. And that's the crux of Buddhist meditation, is observing your thoughts. Okay? It's observing them arise, abide, and cease. It's not doing away with them. It's not banishing them.
Okay.
It's being with the thoughts. It's being with the emotions. It's being with the habits and being able to see them and make intentional choices rather than being controlled by them. You see what I'm saying? So it's
I think so.
It's not like the inventing mind, right, is not going to be put away or destroyed. It's more like, actually, the thoughts that carry delusions, that carry defilements, that drive unpleasant and harmful emotions, that drive habits that harm you, can be let go of, right, and observed, and expose the true nature of your mind. And the true nature of your mind very well could be this, wonderful inventor. We also believe that everyone's a Buddha.
Okay.
Right? Everyone has Buddha nature. And, there's a lot of Buddhas, right? Like,
Right.
in Tibetan Buddhism, I'll show you a picture of this is the refuge tree. These are all the Buddhas that we have in my lineage.
Oh, okay.
So you can see the huge, number of Buddhas we have that are available to us that we have practices on, and that's not even all of them. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of Buddhas that are in Buddhism, and every one of them has different attributes, but they're all also enlightened. Like you have the medicine Buddha, you have Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion, you have Tara, the Buddha of liberation, the mother of all Buddhas. You have Guru Rinpoche. Guru Rinpoche is the Buddha of special means, skillful means. So, like, every one of them has different enlightened activity, but they're all Buddhas. You know what I mean?
So there's supposed to be a incarnated version of the original Buddha?
No. They're all different Buddhas. Everyone's a Buddha.
Okay.
So there's a lot of Buddhas, right?
Oh, okay.
Every Buddha is a little different. You know what I mean?
Okay.
A Buddha, so I guess we should say, what is a Buddha?
Okay,
A
there you go.
Buddhas are enlightened spiritual teachers. Nothing
Okay.
more. In a strict sense, the Buddha is the one who discovers the Dharma and then teaches everybody else on their own. But there's a bunch of different denominations. I don't want to get into that. It's too complicated.
Okay. So
But enlightened beings, right? They all have their own particular qualities. They're not
Right.
the same. So you imagine if me, Damien, and you are all enlightened. Once the suffering is completely driven out of our lives, that doesn't mean we're all going to act the same.
right.
We all have different personalities, different things that we like to do to help others and stuff. And if your gift is to be an inventor, like that's going to come out through meditation and through purifying away all the other garbage.
Right.
You're really going to see the side of yourself that's not driven by ego clinging, and what makes you available to connect to others in a helpful way.
Which makes sense because we all seem to have certain abilities or gifts. Each person, and I was talking to my nephew's girlfriend, and I talked about this on a previous episode, but it hasn't came out yet. We were talking about this, and I was like, it's kind of interesting to me that we all have our own things. Like there can be something you really excel at, but maybe it's not. The world doesn't think it's awesome, but there's something special about that.
Right. There's something special about everybody.
Right. And that's what we talk. And I was like, I wonder why that is. We all kind of have our own. And she's like, so we can seek out each other, and we can kind of combine. And those.
If you really want to get into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
In my lineage, we actually believe that we're already perfected Buddhas, and just can't see it. And other people are too. So when people do things that hurt us, it's actually us being taught.
Are we being taught by a separate entity, or are we
being taught by another Buddha?
Okay, but it's not a part of ourself. That's
no. It's part of our mind, right? Like we observe everything through our mind. But like you, right? Let's say you do something hurtful to me, Randy. That's a teaching that you're giving me, and the way that I react to that teaching, okay, that's going to determine whether I suffer or not.
okay.
Whether I handle it skillfully or wholesomely.
Right.
Interesting.
I like that. I've actually I wouldn't call it studied, but I've watched videos on parallel realities and worlds, and there was one of the lady was talking about how everyone is you pushed out. So when somebody insults you or whatever, like kind of what you're saying, it's exactly what you're saying, but it's part of you. So you're actually kind of giving yourself. That's why I asked that.
Yeah, this is getting into probably a little bit of high level like academic Buddhist philosophy, which maybe is outside of the scope of this
conversation.
Podcast.
Yeah.
There's a school called mind only Buddhism, which postulates that everything is a manifestation of your own mind. Everything comes through your sense doors and is processed in your mind. So it's all your mind. And my school of Buddhism believes that, but not all schools do. So
Interesting. Okay. When you were saying earlier about, I actually have this book right here. When you were talking about, and this actually plays a little bit into reincarnation too, but well, I guess yeah, it does. When you were talking about, someone teaching you a lesson, someone hurts you, it's teaching you a lesson. There's this book called, and I'm not going to go into full detail here, but this was introduced to me at a very hard time in my life. It's called The Little Soul in the Sun.
Oh, okay.
I read this book and I wept harder than I don't think I've ever cried that hard in my life. And I would say the reason I have a kind of a deep connection with the idea of reincarnation is probably started with me reading this book. And I'm not going to read it to us, obviously, but I think and you can actually find the full story in online, but it's essentially about a little soul that is having a conversation with God, asking God, hey, I want to know what it feels like to learn this, to learn happiness or learn sadness, learn these different have these different teachings. And God goes, well, you already know what it means to, you already know what it feels like to be happy, you already know what it feels like to be sad, and these different ones. And he goes, well, I want to learn how to I want to learn forgiveness. And God goes, oh, okay, yeah, there's one that you have yet to learn. And the little soul gets excited and is, saying, yes, we can. I get to learn forgiveness. I get to learn forgiveness. Gets really excited that in his next life he's going to learn forgiveness. And God, by the way, has been like, you've been the male and the female. You've been the in and the out. You've been the poor and the rich. Like, you've had all these experiences, but this is one that you haven't gotten to deal with yet. And anyway, so the soul's excited. He gets to learn forgiveness, and then he goes, there's just one thing, and the little soul's like, what's that? And God goes, there's gonna have to be someone that's gonna have to give that to you, like, that you're gonna have to forgive. Someone's gonna have to do some harm to you. And so God asked, are there any angels here that are willing to harm this little angel? And the little angel, and someone finally speaks up and says, I'll do it. And so they went into the next life together. And before they got into the next life, the other angel told the little angel, just before we go, just promise me that in the end you'll remember who I truly am. And it really brought, like, this sense of, I guess, forgiveness to me. Anyway, it was a beautiful story. It still makes me tear up, like, when I think about it. Just anyway, when I don't know, maybe I'm going way off here, guys. Sorry, but I love that book.
It's very interesting you mentioned that. So
yeah,
I'll give you the dirt on Buddhist reincarnation. All right, well, I'll give you the fast and dirt.
Yeah,
we believe there's 6 realms, right? So we're talking about samsara. Samsara is our universe where we are suffering, right? Within samsara, there's 6 realms. 6. So you have the long-lived god realms, where there are gods that live for a tremendously long period of time. Then you have the demigod realm beneath them. Beneath them, you have the human realm. Then you have the lower realms. The animal realm. The ghost realm, hungry ghost realm. And the realm of hell beings. Now, within these different realms, there's a lot of different split up categories and stuff, particularly in hell. People get particularized punishments. There's different levels of hell and stuff like that. 8 cold hells, 8 hot hells, and stuff like that, There's Avicii hell, which is the worst hell, and all that business. And where you're reincarnated is based on your karma. Okay, it's based on the calculation of how much karmic merit you've accumulated over time, and what kind of deeds you've done.
Within just this lifetime, this most recent lifetime, or like if you had 5 lifetimes?
It's collective. It's not just this lifetime. Karmas are a lot like flowers. Once the seed is sown, it takes time to grow, and then it flowers. And whatever you've sown, you're going to reap, right? It's going to flower, and it may not be in this lifetime, but it could be in the next one. So, it's pretty inescapable, and it's hard to accumulate merit. Accumulating merit is the difficult thing. So one of our lineage masters, Kalu Rinpoche, is one of the great masters of the 20th century. He was one of the ones who established my monastery. And he lectured at our monastery. He said that, there's more beings in hell than there is grains of sand in the Ganges, and there's less beings in the human realm than you can fit the sand in your palm of your hand. Something like that.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's an analogy. Of course, it's not actual numbers.
Right.
But you understand it's like a lot easier to commit bad deeds and to get, sort of crappy karma for that. And, where you end up after you die is based on that karma. It's not a matter of moral blame.
Right.
It's not because you're good or bad.
Okay. So is there
It's just a matter of what you did, so there's no blame.
Right. So so you could like be reincarnated as a human 100 times, but right or like you could go into different realms 100 times, or like if I don't
correct. Buddha was reincarnated as a human many, 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 many times.
Okay.
There's a book, actually, there's scripture called the Jataka Tales that are these like short stories about Buddha's time when he was a person, like many lifetimes earlier, and when he was an animal. A lot of times he was born as a king of different animals. He was a parrot. He was a deer. A lot of different lives. So, you could easily be reborn as a person many times. I will qualify that, though. Being reborn as a person is actually quite difficult. And it's very special to be born as a person. Because when born as a person, you can practice the Dharma. Gods and demigods are far too busy because they can manifest like whatever worldly stuff they want. Mm-hmm. They have no real interest in the Dharma because they could just snap their fingers and have whatever they like. Mm-hmm. Whatever worldly thing is interesting to them. So they don't suffer a whole heck of a lot. They get bored. They fight. Mm-hmm. They have emotional issues with each other. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, for example, in pagan mythology, right? Like, the Greek gods are always fighting with each other, and they have affairs with each other and stuff like that. It's like that, God realm is not perfect. The gods, they suffer because they're not enlightened beings. They have capricious worldly desires, and they enjoy pleasure, and they have emotions just like we do. Gods can be quite selfish, at least in Buddhist cosmology, in that they can be stuck in meditation so deeply that the prayers of people pray to them, they just don't care or don't hear them. They're not interested in granting them because the gods are so deeply engrossed in blissful meditation that it just doesn't matter to them. It would be like ants praying to us,
Right. It's kind of a funny question. And maybe it's just something I've never voiced before, but I've thought it in my head before. With my, I have 2 dogs, and with Randy, are you frozen?
No.
Oh no, you're not. Okay, you're just listening. You're just okay. You were really still for a second. Sorry. So with my 2 dogs, I've thought I'm like, man, I'm kind of an asshole to you guys, so don't hate me in the next life. I have thought about, and I'm like, but I wonder if they would because if I have had previous lives, I don't remember them. But I'm but I've heard that people do remember past lives, and so with my dogs, I'm like, I wonder if they, have they been human before, and if they have, do they what was their life like, and then are they damn it, I'm stuck with this asshole for the next 15 years.
There's a great quote from Guru Rinpoche. Okay? If you want to know your past lives, look at your current conduct. Mm-hmm. Or look at your current situation, excuse me. If you want to know your future lives, look at your current conduct. So if you want to know your past life, look at your current situation. If you want to know your future life, look at your current conduct. Okay? So, chances are people who you've run into in this life, you've run into them in the past. Mm-hmm. Chances are that people who are significant to you in this life are significant to you in the past. Chances are the things you're doing that are significant to you, you did in the past. Your habits, because we believe that the consciousness, the mind, is what transmigrates, not the soul. Your habits are still the same. Whether you were an animal or a hell being or a god, you still have the same bad habits.
Mhm.
That's why you're not enlightened.
Interesting. And can we? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I have
No,
another question.
so the question is like, did you know your dogs? Probably. If the dogs are very close and significant to you, there's a good chance that you knew them in the past.
Interesting.
I can't tell you for certain or anything,
Right,
but
right.
but according to Buddhist doctrine, yeah, it's quite possible. Could have been your friends.
Right, right. Wouldn't surprise me if that were the case, with especially with dogs, with how close people can become with their pets. But my next question was going to be, sorry, Randy, I know I keep on taking up all the questions, but can you go into the enlightenment a little bit? What's that? What does it mean to be enlightened?
What happens in
Before you
enlightenment?
do that, Paljor, we're going to take another quick break, and then we'll get into
I want to get
enlightenment.
some more water for my tea anyway.
Yeah,
That works.
I'll be right back
All
as well.
guys. Hang tight. Hey guys, Randy from the podcast here. As you might have known, I'm actually a realtor in the Boise, Idaho mountain home area with Next Home Treasure Valley. If you are looking to move to this area, let me know. Send me a message, and I'd like to help you out.
Yeah, and I can vouch for Randy's real estate expertise. I lived in Boise, Caldwell, for 7 years, and he was ready to sell my house when I was ready to move for work purposes. Love the area. I 100% recommend that area as well. And Randy was right on the ball.
Thanks, Damien, man. I appreciate it. So if you go to YouTube at Randy W Real Estate, that'll take you to my videos, or you can just email me at randywrealestate.com, and we can get the ball rolling. So let me know if there's anything you need. And thanks, Damien. Thank you, guys.
Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Damien, Randy, and Paljor. We are just about to start talking about enlightenment and how what that means, how you get that maybe, and because I kind of have a general idea of what that is, but I want some more details, I suppose. So
Sure.
could you dive into that?
Enlightenment is quite complicated, actually.
Okay.
Each of the different three vehicles of Buddhism has their own ways of getting there. Right? I think in total there's like 20 or 20 plus different ways of achieving enlightenment, but I think it's really kind of unique per person. In Tibetan Buddhism, as a matter of fact, I'm going to grab some of our scripture. This is a book written by Taisi Tupa Rinpoche, he's the Karmapa, our lineage Lama's teacher. So I'm going to read you a couple quotes from him about enlightenment in Tibetan Buddhism, and I'll sort of spit what I know. Here's the book, Awakening the Sleeping Buddha by Taisi Tupa Rinpoche.
And that's something you can get like on Amazon or something?
Yeah, it is. When I say it's scripture, right, in Tibetan Buddhism, we really kind of consider our high lamas, their writing, as almost like writing from the Buddha. Because these guys are so educated on Buddhism, they're taking distillations of the entire Buddhist canon, which could fill huge bookshelves. I mean, it's enormous. And distilling it into small things for us, so we don't have to do all the work,
Gotcha.
Taisi Tupa Rinpoche explains that... I'll read the first two paragraphs, because I think it really encapsulates what enlightenment is, and then I'll sort of riff on what Taisi Tupa Rinpoche explains. Although it is impossible to know what enlightenment is until we're enlightened ourselves, it's important to gain as much intellectual understanding as possible about it. All levels of Buddhist teaching stress every sentient being is perfect in the ultimate sense. It is this perfect potential that is not yet awakened and developed that gives us our great destiny of Buddhahood or enlightenment. A sentient being who is not enlightened is a sentient being in samsara, self-perpetuating delusion, or what we may call the relative world. Those sentient beings who are enlightened are known as Buddhas. The word Buddha itself, Sanjay, in Tibetan, describes this state quite clearly. Sang means awakened, and Jay means developed. So Sanjay means fully awakened and fully developed, a term that explicitly describes a state of complete enlightenment. To reach that final moment of enlightenment, it might take billions of lifetimes directed towards that end. When that moment arrives, when all effort bears fruit and the individual has finally developed awakening, then the ultimate destination, Buddhahood, is reached. With this simple definition as a basis, it's possible to examine the different levels of realization such as the bhumis, levels of bodhisattva realization. There are many levels of realization before enlightenment, and it is not possible to go into each step because it is a moment-to-moment process. The instant you aspire to be better, a degree of realization takes place. The idea and understanding that you can be better and want to be better is in itself a realization. From this moment until the moment you become better, to that moment you gain a deeper understanding and have deeper aspiration to improve. Every moment becomes a moment of realization. So it's impossible to go through it all in one book. But one will experience these insights gradually. I think that statement, Taisi Chupa Rinpoche really explains it very well. Because it's not a linear process. Right? It's gradual, very slow sometimes. And especially for beings that aren't explicitly practicing Buddhism, billions of lifetimes. So gradual, the pace, you know? Everyone's making mistakes and constantly trying to do better, right? How do we get to enlightenment? Good question.
I was like, are you wanting us to answer?
Yeah. No, I'm kind of spitting it back at you rhetorically.
Yeah.
Right.
We get to enlightenment really by eradicating suffering for ourselves and with the intention of eradicating suffering for all other beings. Okay, that's in the Mahayana tradition and Vajrayana. We call that the enlightened mind, bodhicitta. Very, very important to do everything with bodhicitta. The intention of relieving suffering from others, compassion. That's what separates us from the Theravadins. And this makes reducing ego clinging easier. Because when we're practicing with the intention of saving others from suffering, it reduces ego clinging and diminishes the ego. When do you become finally fully enlightened? Like, I couldn't answer that, just like Taisi Chupa Rinpoche says. It's slow increments of becoming better and better and becoming a more virtuous person and helping others in a more enlightened way, right?
So it's almost the opposite of self. Like the more you are not about yourself, the more you're
actually it's 100% that way. Yes, it's not even a little bit that way. I guess the crudest explanation, and we'll talk about like what my view is. The crudest explanation that I could give you is the complete and utter destruction of the ego. That's enlightenment. When you no longer have any sort of ego clinging at all to an identity of me, myself, I, and all of a sudden I becomes like a placeholder. Even the Buddha said I, because you need it as a grammatical thing. But the Buddha was entirely egoless. Right? And I think that Jesus Christ, in a lot of ways, embodies a lot of these qualities of egolessness, where he was going around, helping the lepers and stuff like that.
Right.
Buddha enlightened a serial killer. There was Buddha's cousin tried to murder him a bunch of times, and Buddha forgave him every single time.
Interesting.
So you understand, this is a person who had no more clinging to an isolated identity. It didn't make any difference to him. There's a really great story. There's a great Zen story. I like Zen because I actually like the Zen stories, the stories of the Zen masters. There's one terrific story about the Zen master Hakuin. Now, Hakuin was not Hakuin, Ryoken, excuse me. He lived on this mountain, and he was a recluse, hermit. He had nothing. All he had was his robe, his slippers, and his bowl. And he was very famous for his calligraphy. So this robber came into his house one time thinking he was going to steal calligraphy or force Ryoken to make him calligraphy. And, Ryoken's brushes and stuff were at the temple, weren't in his hovel. And the guy broke in and woke Ryoken up. And Ryoken was there in the middle of the night with this robber in his house, and he was like, well, what can I give you? Here, take my robe. because he had I guess he had an extra robe, but it was falling apart in tatters. He didn't even have food. And the guy looked at the robe, and he looked back at Ryoken, who's this scrawny old man, and he's so ashamed of himself. He just puts the robe down and says, "I'm sorry, master," and leaves. And then Ryoken went out to his porch and looked up at the moon, and he said, "Man, I really wish that this guest could have come, and I could have just given him the whole moon."
Right. But he gave him a lesson.
A lot of the time, it's not so much you're learning that you're bringing to the table; it's your moral rectitude.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a place for like finishing or like turning people around or anything like that. It's a place for people who've done the right thing already.
Right. Interesting. Okay, that makes sense. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Paljor, for as Randy kept saying, enlightening us today. It's been a pleasure having you on. As far as the listeners go, if you guys want to join the conversation, email us at contact@notupfordebate.com. That's the number 4. Visit our website, which is notupfordebate.com. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Message us there. We'd love to hear from you guys. And if you want to be a guest on the show or have any questions or anything like that, we'd love to hear from you. Again, Paljor, it's been a pleasure. We'll have to have you back again. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for your time and
take it easy, guys. Maybe next time we can like focus on something specific. Maybe the focus on like meditation. It would be cool. It would be cool if we could get some different people from different faiths, like some Hindu yogis or like Christian contemplatives or something like that, and get them all together.
Yeah. That would be cool.
And we've kind of talked about doing something like that. So yeah, that would be actually really great. And we haven't even interviewed anybody in the Hindu faith yet.
No.
So it'd be really cool to do like a panel. But yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Take it easy, guys.
All right, you too. All right, thanks.